Welcome back in. We took a little bit of a week off. Vacations abound at this point of the year. The Wolves being eliminated from the playoffs, missing out on the finals for the second straight year, kind of hurt everybody, so we all took a little bit of a break. Video-wise, writing-wise, we all kept going, but now we're back, and I want to discuss an article you wrote this morning based off the news that the Packers have released longtime cornerback Jaire Alexander. I know plenty of Vikings fans have fond memories of him going back and forth with Vikings receivers over the past handful of years, but he is now an available free agent. The Vikings, whether you want to say it like this or not, they have still a need. I mean, if you can look at it that way, at cornerback. So would he be, and I know you wrote this over at on Vikings on SI, is he a good fit should the Vikings look to target him in free agency now?
Yeah, I went into that kind of the title is like, should the Vikings do it? I went in just kind of thinking I would explore it. And in the process of doing so, I pretty much just talked myself into it. I took the more like column-y approach last week, and I said, the Vikings should trade for Jalen Ramsey. But I think the Jaire Alexander option is more intriguing than Jalen Ramsey in some respects. He's not quite as, proven of a player. He hasn't had quite the same level of career, in part due to injury issues, which we can get into are very much part of the conversation with Alexander. But he's a couple years younger. He just got released, so you wouldn't have to part with any draft capital to trade for him, which you might with Jalen Ramsey, although he might end up being released by the Dolphins at some point too if they don't work out a trade. But for now, he's still on a roster. Jaire Alexander is now not on a roster. He's a free agent, free to sign with any team. It'll come down to the price tag, certainly. It'll come down to how you feel about his injury history. But when he's been on the field, he's a very good player. He's a two-time second-team All-Pro, ball skills, zone coverage instincts. He can play in man. He can come up and tackle. He's got kind of a feistiness to him, an edge to him that I think is a reason why Vikings fans haven't been the most fond of him, because he's one of those classic cornerbacks who is going to talk some trash. He's going to let you know about it. He grittied over Justin Jefferson in Week 17 of the 2022 season, which obviously Vikings fans don't love to see it. But hey, if he's on their team, I think opinions would change pretty quick. It wouldn't be the first time a former Packers star switched sides in that rivalry.
No, absolutely not. Feels like one of those players that you love to go, or you hate to go against, but you love when he's on your team. Speaking of which, part of the whole drama and everything that happened with Alexander over in Green Bay was there was just some tensions there in Green Bay with the coaching staff and everything around there. How do you see that potentially fitting with the Vikings coaching staff that has fostered a culture that they've been very careful about adding certain pieces to? They have not wanted to rock the boat too much. They wanted guys who fit into that culture. Would you see him fitting into that, or would that be something where it's a little bit of an exception because of how good this guy could be in the system?
Yeah, that would be, I think, another valid concern to raise. I think there'd be three, I suppose, potential sticking points. One would just be the price. If he's really holding out for star CB1 money, the Vikings may not want to do that because they only have so much cap space at this point in the offseason. They may feel like they want to retain some flexibility or maybe make a smaller move at that position. Then it's the injuries, which he's over the last 4 years, he's played in 34 out of 68 possible regular season games. If you know some math, that is exactly half, 50%, which is not what you want. You would like to be playing a lot more games than that. He's had shoulder issues, back issues, quad, knee, a litany of things. He even had some injury issues back in his final year at Louisville before he was a first-round pick, and then missed a few games as a rookie. So it's kind of followed him. At the same time, 2019 through 2021, 3 out of those 4 seasons, 2019 through 2022, 3 out of the 4 seasons he played at least 16 games or 15 games. So it's not like he's completely unable to stay on the field. Like, I don't think this is like an Andrew Booth Jr. situation necessarily. Not to catch a stray there for Andrew Booth, but yeah. But then to get back to your question, I think the other one would maybe be the culture fit, and is he a little bit of a head case? Is he a little bit of somebody who's going to voice his displeasure if things aren't going well, or act up on the sidelines or whatever. And I guess I don't really know the exact answer to that, just having not been around him or followed his career week by week. But what I would say is, I think the Vikings could overcome a little bit of that existing, given the talent and given that the number one goal this year is to win and win big and go into a Super Bowl window. And if Jaire Alexander could be the guy to get you over the top and help you do that, then I think it could be worth the risk, because you look at it and think about the secondary with Byron Murphy Jr., Jaire Alexander, and Isaiah Rodgers as your corners, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson as your safeties. Like it just, everything would fit a lot better on the depth chart if you push Rodgers down to the 3. You push Jeff Okudah, Mekhi Blackman down to like the 4 or 5 depth guys, instead of, hey, you might be starting, and if somebody gets hurt, you might both be starting. It looks really good. Jaire Alexander is a guy who can really play. And so I think the culture that exists could potentially be a benefit or help maybe mitigate some of those concerns. Like if you're bringing a guy in to a locker room that has a ton of veteran leadership, a no nonsense coaching staff, a real kind of culture of just working and winning and being a good teammate, then I think it would maybe make a guy like that kind of just have to fit into that a little bit, even if in the past it's been a bit rocky.
Stylistically, when you look at some of his numbers and look back at the way he plays, does he fit what Brian Flores asks of his corners? I know that's always been kind of the sticking point with free agent quarterbacks, is how well they fit into the system that they're going into. Obviously, if you're a man system, you don't want a zone cornerback. How does he fit into what Brian Flores asked his cornerbacks to do, and what we've seen over the past couple of years of this Vikings defense?
Yeah, having not like really studied the recent Jaire Alexander tape extensively or anything like that, I think he would fit. I think he's kind of always been a corner who can do both of those things. He's been a guy who can be your number one corner and has been the Packers' number one corner and play press man, and sometimes that's going to lead to bad results. And there was a October 2023 Vikings Packers game where Jordan Addison was in the backfield and then kind of roasted Jaire Alexander out on a route for a touchdown, and there's been times where Jefferson's gotten him and Thielen, but there's also been times where he's gotten those guys, and he's made some nice plays. I think even if you don't think of him as like a press man number one type corner at this point in his career, he's 28, so still in his prime, but a lot of injuries, maybe not quite the same player. He still has really good zone instincts, and that could be useful. Kind of in a similar way to Byron Murphy Jr., who's just a really good playmaker. He's got great ball skills. He can play man coverage, absolutely, but some of the best things he does are in zone, and Flores likes to do both. He wants guys who can get up and play man when needed, but also they're going to play a lot of different zone looks on the back end. So I think Alexander would work. I think he also has shown he's not afraid to come up and play against the run and tackle a little bit, which is a prerequisite for playing in a Brian Flores system. So I think the football fit could work. I think he's a great player, and I think Brian Flores could make it work with a great player.
You mentioned earlier that last week you wrote about whether the Vikings should go after and trade for Jalen Ramsey, one of the top cornerbacks out there that we know the Dolphins kind of want to move on from. And I want to look at some of these other options. There's a lot of options still on the market, good names out there. I mean, and we've seen the Vikings make these moves in the past, late in the offseason, sometimes into training camp, where they bring in a veteran guy just to kind of fill out and round out their roster and be that one final piece. I mean, Stephon Gilmore was that last year, and he's still out there available. Whether he decides to retire or not is up to him, obviously, and we'll see what he makes of that decision. But you mentioned Jalen Ramsey. Asante Samuel Jr.'s been out there. That name's been out there for a while as a guy that has been heavily linked with the Vikings. So where does Jaire Alexander kind of rank in those names that are still available for free agent cornerbacks?
He's right up there at the top. It's either him or Ramsey are the two best guys who you could theoretically acquire Ramsey, like I said, a little bit more of a decorated career. I mean, he's I think 7-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first team All Pro, potential Hall of Fame type of guy. So definitely a better career than Alexander, but also 2 years older. So that factors in, especially at a position like cornerback. Under contract, if any team were to trade for him right now, there'd be something like 20 plus million in guaranteed money involved. So maybe I think it's 24 million. So the Dolphins would probably have to eat a little bit of that if they want to get a decent draft pick back at all. So that is certainly a factor. Those two guys would be at the top. And then you start looking into other options. Asante Samuel Jr. is a really interesting one because everything about his profile screams like this is a Vikings target. He's a former high pick. Yep. He's got the really good 10-yard split on the athletic sheet that the Vikings love. He's coming off an injury, which again was something I talked about. That's something I talked about in the Alexander article. Like the Vikings feel really confident that their medical and their training staff, led by Tyler Williams, is an organizational advantage for them. Like that they think that they can bring in guys where there's some injury risk involved, and that can be kind of a market inefficiency because they have this really, really excellent training staff where you can't obviously ever guarantee anything or prevent Kirk Cousins from popping an Achilles or prevent injuries from happening. But you can do everything in your power to try to increase the odds in your favor. And I mean, just look at who they signed in free agency this year. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. All 4 of those guys missed at least 7 games last year. A couple of them missed 12 or more games. So they're banking on that. And they think they're getting value with that approach. So they wouldn't be, I don't think they'd be scared by a Jaire Alexander. Obviously, I don't know the exact history of his medicals, and then they would certainly do an evaluation if they were looking into this, but I don't think they'd be scared by that. The Samuel one, like there's been rumblings that he might have something really bad with his knee. I think it's a knee, like something.
Right, because a guy who's 25 and is coming off of the years that he's had, you would think he would be up there to sign a big contract, and he's still out there for some reason.
Yeah, like does he have something like with Will Johnson from Michigan who is coming out this year where it's like you're concerned about the longevity of his knee being able to hold up? I don't know the answer to that because Samuel on paper seems like a guy who should make a lot of sense for the Vikings, but there haven't really been any rumblings on that front. But it is now after June 1st, which opens up some cap space for teams. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, I do expect the Vikings to add a veteran cornerback of some sort before the season starts, just because right now you are one injury away from your cornerback room. Let's say Byron Murphy gets hurt. Your cornerback room is like Isaiah Rodgers, Mekhi Blackman, and Jeff Okudah. And that is that would be a glaring weak link on an otherwise absolutely loaded defense. You mentioned Gilmore. I don't know if that'll happen again. He's almost 35. Right. Shaq Griffin is also out there. I think that could make a little more sense if you wanted to just bring a guy back who already knows the scheme. He had, I think, visited the Seahawks and maybe another team. James Bradbury is a big name who's out there, who's older. I don't know that if the Vikings would have interest there. There's plenty of guys who are on the wrong side of 30 who you might be able to get on like a 1-year deal as just a kind of floor raiser, like a Kendall Fuller, Rasul Douglas. I'm looking on the spot track list here, which sometimes like is inaccurate. Like sometimes these guys could have retired or something or signed with a team. It's not always perfect, but guys like that, Emmanuel Mosley, CJ Henderson is a former top pick who's in his mid-20s who could be interesting, but that's sort of the Jeff Okudah route that they've already done. I think you'd want a guy with a higher floor. I think Rasul Douglas would be a name of that list who would be a little interesting to me as well. But if you can go out and get a Jalen Ramsey or a Jaire Alexander and just say, F it, we have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. We already loaded up our defensive line. We added some pieces on offense, obviously. This defense was second in DVOA last year and now already looks a lot better this year on paper than it did when you talk about Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave and year 2 of Dallas Turner. And it would be – you would have no real weak link if you can go out and get another star cornerback. So I say do it. Why not?
I love it. You answered my last question was is cornerback essentially the weakest link on this team remaining after a pretty heavy offseason where they made a lot of moves to shore up a lot of weaknesses. And it feels like when you look at this roster, cornerback's the final position that they really need to kind of strengthen up before a season, which they go in with a lot of expectations. Will, good stuff from you.
You can go position by position, not to cut off your lovely outro, but like they got Pro Bowl level dudes at every position, and that is also true at cornerback, where Byron Murphy Jr. did literally make the Pro Bowl last year. But you got to play 2 of them or 3 of them sometimes. The Vikings get away with playing 2 of them more than most teams because they have the 3 safeties, and they I think they still are going to have the 3 safeties with Theo Jackson stepping in for Cam Bynum. Mm-hmm. But there are also times where you want to play 3, and there's also the possibility of injuries, especially at cornerback. So that outside of the obvious, which is the starting quarterback has never played in an NFL regular season game before, which is the biggest storyline around the Vikings, I know.
Yep.
Outside of that, corner I think is the clear area where you could still point to, all right, one more addition and things might get scary.
Yeah, and if they can shore that up, man, the expectations, which already feel high for this team, might just go through the roof, especially if you land a Jaire Alexander or a Jalen Ramsey type of player. And to that defense that was already pretty good last year and seemingly only improved. Well, looking forward to your coverage, more of your coverage over on Vikings on SA. Go read all of his works there, as well as the rest of our coverage of the Twins, Gophers, and Timberwolves on Twins, Gophers, and Timberwolves on SI as well. Do hit subscribe to the channel. It does help us get found, notifies you every time we post a new video to the channel. Talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports.